Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can get to the conversation by first traveling to Zoom, which you'll see a link in the description, and then traveling to Mukana, which you'll see a link in the chat. So that's how you get into the conversation. If you see this amazing panel and you think that you might be able to contribute, you might have something to add to the conversation. You just need to get here early, 6:40 Pacific Standard Time. Be ready for a mic check. We're going to check your audio, your video, your internet connection. You can come as early as 6 o'clock is when we open the doors, and you can come in, test your kit, make sure that things are working. So and it's kind of a loose conversation first thing in the morning. We're having tea and coffee and kind of figuring things out. So if but that's a good time for you to come in, make sure that everything's working. But then if you need to be ready and tested here at 6:40. We also hand out the Discord link. So that's something that you can jump into if you want to see about 1,000 other people like us talking in between. So anyway, so those are the that's kind of the basic setup. If you have general questions about media production, virtual production, that's 7 to 8 every day. 7 days a week. So you can come in anytime and ask those questions. And then we usually have a special concept or idea that we're going to talk about in the second hour, or a subject matter that we're going to talk about. And make sure to tag those as second hour. The way to do that in Makana is to ask the question. And then after you post the question, you can tag it. You can add a note to it, or you can tag it as a second hour. That way we can sort it properly. We're going to be talking about ATEM Minis today. I've got a couple of them laying around here right now. And we've got some folks that haven't come here often or at all. Aaron Parecki, who's done a lot of ATEM videos on YouTube and is in our Discord as well. He's going to be here to talk about it. Steve Brazill is also here, and he actually did a second hour. Did he just disappear? Did we lose Steve?
No, Steve's here. Somebody's pinned him.
He just moved. He pinned him. Okay, I got it. Okay, so I was like, I knew where he was, and then suddenly he was gone. Anyway, so Steve is here. Steve is not really a morning person, so we're lucky to have him here. And also Jonas Tatel is who's going to be guesting one of our second hours in the future is here as well. We don't see Jonas very often, and also we have, of course, the regulars that are all here. So anyway, so ask those questions in the second hour, and let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead, Bill.
All right. Welcome, everybody. And today's first question comes in from panelist Phil Lenger. And Phil is interested in WLM meters, the ones we use on the show. And he says, is anyone successfully using WLM meters with Big Sur and Audio Hijack? He's questioning compatibility. He seems to be having some trouble under Big Sur, and he's on Waves version 12.
John, and then Ray.
So I was having successful using Big Sur until I updated Audio Hijack Pro, and then that killed it. It seems to be separate from there. They had a different update that was involving the audio integration that is shared between that and Loopback. Loopback updated that. Didn't seem to break the Audio Hijack, but when Audio Hijack updated itself, it completely broke it, and now it's just a white screen. TJ was having problems and couldn't even find a way to roll back. So, and apparently you can't opt out of this upgrade. There wasn't like a cancel button, so just a heads up, Audio Hijack is definitely having issues.
All right, go ahead, Ray, and then Mickey.
I had the exact same problem, and Audio Hijack came through like gangbusters. I sent them a note, and within 10 minutes, they sent me a new build. And my WLM is now working like a champ, but it is a special build, and he's going to do an official release soon. But I have my WLM working just fine. But I ran an exact thing. I'm on a Mac Pro. Audio Hijack.
Is it Waves 12?
Yeah, and Waves 12. Yeah, I updated the two at the same time. I'll never do that again. but you live and learn.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
Anyway.
Yeah, on top of the Audio Hijack issue, at the moment, Waves doesn't officially support M1 yet. So if you're on an M1, it's still not gonna run.
Steve, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I was just going to say my audio hijack. I just launched it this morning to run WLM on on myself before I joined, and it told me about the update. It looks like I'm glad I didn't do it, but mine did allow me to say no. So it wasn't mandatory for me.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, next question.
Moving on, we've got one in from Sky, our friend here on the panel from Seattle, Washington. Tips on how not to mess up tomorrow. And for non-regular listeners, he's on with Madeleine cooking on the Today Show tomorrow. 3 iPhones over FaceTime with AirPods to 30 Rock directly from where they are in Seattle. So, thoughts?
Good. Stuart?
Breathe in, pause, breathe out, repeat. Everything will be fine. You've got this.
Chuck, go ahead.
Not really a suggestion, but a follow-up question. When you're doing something like that, is it better to maybe have like one on Wi-Fi and the other 2 on cellular? And not keep all on the same connection type is what I'm asking.
Oh, have all of them go Wi-Fi. I have all of them go cellular. I think
I'm just curious. I worry about that. I don't know why today's show is having you use wireless.
it's safer. It's
FaceTime.
safer for them, and they.
I guess.
But no, that's a good point. To turn Wi-Fi off. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, your Wi-Fi will generally be a faster connection.
Really?
But having a camera, one of the cameras on cellular means that if your Wi-Fi goes down for some reason, one of the cameras is still live. That could be, that seems like a reasonable thing. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
That's good backup.
I always feel that using iPhones for something like that is very scary because, if somebody calls, if somebody does anything, it could show up onto the screen. So my advice is to close everything out. If you can uninstall certain things, uninstall them and get that going. And then, of course, 100% charge on the batteries, but still have something plugged in to continually give more charge to the battery. Because once again, these apps might be pulling out more power, and you want to definitely curtail that.
How long's the hit?
I think we're 5 minutes.
5 minutes, 7 minutes. Yeah.
But how early do they want you on? Sitting there waiting.
A half hour.
Oh yeah. And when are you showing up?
6 a.m. Western.
What's their hit? When's their hit?
10:45 Eastern.
So 7:45. So you're showing up an hour and 45 minutes ahead of time.
Yeah.
And you're walking away the night tonight. It's tonight or later? It's tomorrow, right?
It's tomorrow morning. This time tomorrow. We'll be doing something.
So you will have rehearsed all of it tonight, right? And you're going to leave everything lit, ready to go. So all you got to do is, if they wanted to do it at 6:15, you would be able to do it. I mean, that's the main thing is if you're an hour, like to us, if we're completely ready in a house or whatever, 2 hours is what we usually consider minimum call time.
Yeah.
If we're in a facility, 4 hours. Like, so, if we're in someone, like, because we don't trust facilities because, things get moved around, bumped, whatever. And we're not going in early because we need that much time to set up. We're doing that early so that if we show up and things are broken or not working, we can work around them. But I mean, with iPhones and everything else, you're dealing with a pretty simple pipeline. But I think what everybody else said is just to make sure that you've rehearsed it. And their pipeline is nuts. Like that's not the craziest.
We offered a second time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't.
And then what are the cameras doing?
Main wide camera. The Sam Cam is doing the close in on the food stuff, and then we've got the safety backup. Actually, I'm going to try to do it as a feedback so she can be seeing Hoda and Jenna.
And then
HDMI that out to a big monitor so she can.
And is the Sam Cam on a stabilizer?
I have it on a rig, so at least he's got some handholds.
You may find
that
like a DJI Osmo would do better. I've seen some of his camera work. He probably would benefit from an Osmo.
I don't disagree. It's not his comfort zone, and I'm working with talent that I'm requested to work with. I
would play with it though. Have him play with it. I would have him play with it. Get him over the hump because it's pretty nifty for that kind of thing. Go ahead, Guy, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, do you have a Lightning to Ethernet adapter? Because then you can have 3 ways of going out. So you got Ethernet hardwired in, you got Wi-Fi fallback, and then you got cellular as the fallback.
Yeah.
I don't have that Ethernet, but I do have the HDMI adapter, so I can be. I mean, I'm powering
It's
all
not
of
that.
this.
It's really getting Ethernet out of it. You can. So that's, I mean, the Ethernet adapter is pretty nifty as far as putting it in there, but something to think about. Go ahead,
I
Roscoe.
will look it around.
Do you have a way to match the 3 cameras before you mount them up? Side by side, looking at them all, going into some sort of FaceTime or...
I think the problem with FaceTime,
iPhones.
the problem is that with FaceTime, I don't think you have color control. It's going to do what it's going to do.
No,
But you
but
don't
at
have...
Three
swap cameras.
devices should be all managed color, so they should be putting out pretty consistent.
But what I'm saying is that you can't lock the color like Filmic. So there's no way to, it's just going to, that's a problem with FaceTime, which why I would never use it for this kind of thing is because it's a disaster.
But he can just verify that all the settings are the same on each one, just having them all side by side. He's probably good. Just make sure.
Yep.
No, I agree. And I do have a chip chart, so I can
it won't matter. Facebook is just, I mean, FaceTime is going to do whatever it's going to do. Anyway, let's go to the next question.
Moving on to Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois. We have been following along on the inauguration today. One site we found is Woke. They do a great job of aggregating all the feeds. My question is how? How do they manage to aggregate everybody else's content? Link in the notes, and he has a URL.
So I took a gander at that, and what they're doing is they're getting all the feeds. None of them are broadcast feeds. Those are all the streamed feeds. And then they are just putting them in a picture-in-picture. Like that's just that could be OBS most likely. I mean, you could do OBS as an input. You could do Wirecast. You could do anything, Mimo Live. All of those would give you that ability to stack those inputs up to it. And you could probably do it all over NDI just with screen share, with some kind of screen share with even a series of windows that you kind of cut out in the same. You could open up 5 windows or 6 windows on one computer. You could grab them all and stick them into little into those bits and pieces. I don't know exactly how they're doing it, but that wouldn't be that hard. It is a violation of everybody's copyright rules. So I think that the reason that they're probably getting away with it is because the screens aren't the full size as the live stream. But the audio still could get printed. So, if anyone's looking at that going, that's really cool. And how do they do that? Just know that could lead, what they're doing there could lead to a strike on YouTube. This isn't a, hey, that's a strikeable offense. So, you get 3 of those. We take 6 months each to come off. Not that I know. Anyway, Steve.
Yeah, and I would just add to the copyright thing that, I mean, we don't know if they licensed it.
They didn't. I guarantee it.
Guarantee
that because I can tell you those broadcasters would never license it out.
Yeah, and the fact that they are still streaming it now does not mean they won't get that strike later.
Yeah,
which is not a good thing. So,
right. So enjoy it while it lasts.
In other words, don't watch them and go, "Oh, well, I can do that too."
Yeah,
because you can't.
Yeah, it's a dangerous thing to do with your channel. I mean, if they did it repeatedly, YouTube would kill their channel. Like because it's a violation. It's a series of violations on top of each other. So that's you could get into a lot of trouble there. So anyway, what they're doing isn't very hard. What they are doing is not recommended either. So anyway, next question.
Moving on, we're moving to Jeffrey Vandenberg's question, and Jeffrey is from Calgary, Canada, and inquires about the video quality in Zoom. As reported under statistics, he's only getting 640 by 360 progressive. How do I increase the resolution to 720p so I have an acceptable resolution when I share my desktop through a virtual webcam? HD is already enabled. Zoom has not yet answered my recent query.
Guy?
Get one of these things right here. Facebook portal. This is the big one. You don't have to get the biggest one, but when this thing joins the meeting, it'll up-res the meeting from 640 by 360 to 1280 by 720. So there is also a new model that is from Amazon, the Echo 8, which will do the same trick, and that one's only $99. So that might be the way to go because maybe you don't want Facebook in your house. So get one of those and it'll do the trick. Otherwise, you can get a full-on Zoom room for $50 a month and a camera and a computer and run a Zoom room and it'll do the same thing. So basically what this is doing is it's acting like a Zoom room, which is a corporate way of getting into Zoom, and so it's kind of tricking it and enabling the Zoom Room conference connector to up-res to HD. So that's one.
And that
way.
thing that adds
Jeff?
that you don't have to go, you don't have to use it, you don't have to talk through it. It just has to be in the meeting, and it'll increase the
Yeah, and it doesn't even
resolution.
have to stay. It only has to come in for about 20 seconds, and the little bit will be flipped, and you can leave or boot it out.
Right. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Aaron.
Don't forget that the resolution that the statistics displays changes if you go full screen on the window that you're displaying the return feed from Zoom. Guy, what is the maximum resolution you can get without the Zoom Room?
That is at 1280 by 720. So it's not the full 1920 by 1080 to get that. Just keep pushing on that inquiry. You will need a business account or an enterprise account to be able to get them to even look at the request seriously. So, and then you got to use the terms that they use, which are large audience, broadcast. You got to have a good excuse to have them flip that bit. It's not that easy.
Aaron, and then Mickey.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know this was part of your question, but the other option here is to not share your screen through the webcam. Actually use Zoom screen sharing, and then you get full resolution of your screen displayed for everybody, and that's going to give you your best results for actual screen sharing, right?
Yeah, the big challenge is always the frame. You're choosing frame rate or resolution when you use, when you bounce between those. So if you're able to get to 720 and 720 is sufficient, you get both. You get the frame rate and the resolution. But you're right that you're always get whatever the highest resolution that your screen is. But the higher the resolution of your screen, the lower the bit rate, or the lower the frame rate will be when people are watching it. So if you're trying to watch something with video, it gets, hard. Mickey.
Yeah, and with the Pro account, which is the cheap, the most affordable paid account that you can get with Zoom, with one-on-one meetings, you'll get 720p. But as you add more people, it'll drop back to 360p.
Yep. All right. And again, this is a good day to ask questions. We're a little, they're running. We have a bunch stacking up for the second hour. First hour is still a little anemic. So if you want to ask questions, this is a good time to do it. Next question.
Next question comes in from Jeffrey Powers here in the panel. And what types of clocks and timers do you use to keep a show on time?
Go ahead, Bill.
I've for a long time relied on Mini Timer, which is a real simple little countdown thing. If you touch it, you can set different numbers, and then you press long and it just counts up or counts down to those things. It's crazy simple. It's a little app, and I think it's just a few bucks, but I've used it for all sorts of shows and it works flawlessly.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Other than DCN products, the speaker timers that we've used in live shows, online now we're using some of the timer functionality out of Pro Presenter, where it has total time, and you can set different timers that count down and also give them time remaining every time you play a video clip. For meetings, what we're doing is we're taking that output and putting it into the gallery view, similar to what we do with WLM here.
I'm going to see if this works. Go ahead, Steve.
Hung out. There we go. Now I'm unmuted. I was just going to say there's a couple of things. First of all, from a broadcast point of view, you can create your own for just an overall vision of your show. You can create a free broadcast style clock at something like uClockit or uclock.it. But I use an app, and I think it's called Presentation Timer on iPad, that does all kinds of fun stuff for doing shows. In fact, I'm looking up the name as we speak. It's P-Clock is what it's actually listed as. But you can do countdown timers, count up timers, have it change color, red, yellow. So when I do some stuff at a local TV station, they'll hook that and run it through the teleprompter so that myself, and more importantly, the guests that tend to ramble, can see a countdown clock turn red at a certain time. So it helps keep everybody on time.
I just realized that I was trying to screen share to show you the one that I use, and I'm getting a screen sharing. I'm getting a second window from my iPhone, which I find to be fascinating. No. Anyway, so what I use is what we've used for a long time is atomic clock. So it syncs to the atomic clock, which I don't know how useful that is because the phone does that, but it's basically like that. And I like it because I can for some reason, that thing going around makes seconds look a lot longer. You feel like you're living in 60ths of a second, and it feels slower when time feels like it slows down. But we throw those on iPads, on iPhones, on other things like that. There's two of them. Make sure you get the one that looks like it has a circle. That's like the BBC clock. There's another one that calls itself atomic clock, and it is something else. It's worthless. So anyway, so that's the other one is because you need to see seconds, and I don't want it to be, but atomic clock is what we've used for probably the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And we use it it looks great on iPads and phones and everything else. Old iPads usually become atomic clocks in the studio. That's kind of where they go to live out the rest of their days. Roscoe and then Aaron.
I was going to say, and the TED timer is out there in the world. I think I can. Oops, let me get back to it here. That's what happens when you have Windows. So TED timer, it's really easy to configure. You just click up and down, you start it, and when it goes to 0, it goes big and red and knocks everyone out. And if you look around, you can find this on the internet. It is the TED timer.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the website bigtimer.net. I find myself on that quite a lot, and it's just a giant timer. There's no account. It just works. You just click go. It starts counting down. You can change the time. You can whatever, right? It's free, no account or anything. So I don't know. It's useful.
Does that one allow you to have different segments where it will go from green to yellow, red, anything like that, or?
There's like no options on it, which is why it's so great.
Timer.
It just does the one thing.
Yeah, and the other one
put that link in the Makana.
Looks like somebody just did. Thanks.
So the other one that's that we've used a lot. I realized that you were talking about speaker timers. I was just thinking about clocks. But for speaker timers, there is one called Speaker Timer Pro from DB Video Labs, and it has a nice feature. It has a lot of color controls, and so you have kind of a pretty lo-fi interface to control it and to type in your what you want to show. But it is one of the nice things about it has a little thing called time warp, which means that you can actually subtly make it go faster. So we've used this because you can, you have a speaker up there looking at a clock and they're timing off of it. They don't know whether it's 5 minutes or 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. And we've over 1 hour, gotten back, 3 or 4 minutes by just subtly speeding up the clock. And so it's a nice feature to have, is to be able to go just a little faster than real time. And
is it just to jump to the left as well? Or?
It doesn't jump.
It was a time warp. Never mind.
Yeah, it's time warp.
It's a sort of timer, not really a timer, since it's measuring.
Which is great.
You can change its measuring rate.
But you have it on a big screen in the back, and the speaker's looking up, and they're just tracking against that. And if you do it too much, of course, they would notice. But if you're doing it just a little bit, you can get 20% back pretty easily, as far as that goes. And not that if you're a speaker that's worked with us, of course, we've never done it with you. All right, next question.
All right, wait a second. There we go. Time's up on this question.
Yep. There you go. All right.
All right. So we're moving on to Frank Haney of Ottawa, Canada. Audio Hijack recently had an update to the ACE engine. This seems to have broken my WLM meters. Is this a known issue?
Sounds like this has been an issue for a lot of people. A lot of audio hijack. So I guess we already probably covered this earlier this morning. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to comment. It's not ACE that broke it, because I got an ACE update previously through Loopback. I couldn't remember the name of the product because I have problems with acronyms. But yeah, it was the Audio Hijack update that broke it.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
Moving on to Alex Olignowitz in Toronto. This is for Mickey. Any suggestions for a stagebox splitter, 16 in, 16 out analog with Dante?
Ooh, yeah, I don't have that much experience with larger channel counts of Dante. I'm just usually sending like 2 to 4 channels out. But what I've seen a lot in events has been I forgot what they call it, but the Yamaha one,
the Rio.
Rio, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we've had a lot of Rios. so the Rios come in a couple different sizes. I think there's a 16.8 and a 32.16. I think those are the two
I'm
sizes.
pretty sure there's a 16 of that. Yeah, 16 and 16 out. And for splitters, because usually the Rio is just the Dante stage box. For splitters, what's been pretty much standard, I think, at least around here, has been the Whirlwind ones for with a transformer balance outlets.
Right. Go ahead, Chuck.
Was that the Tio?
The Rio. It's a
okay.
RIO, and it's really designed to work with the the QL1, QL5, CL5, so on and so forth. In fact, the CL5 doesn't really have any. Doesn't have. I don't think the CL5 doesn't. The CL series, I don't think has any inputs on the back, and so it needs something like a Rio to integrate with. Now, note that anything on Dante will work. So we've used, the cheaper thing to do is we've actually used X32 racks as the, now that's not quite what you need because I think it's only 8 out. It's 16 in, 8 out. But the X32 racks we've actually used as Dante boxes, stage boxes. You know, we've had needed too many. We had 2 or 3 Rios in the system, and then we needed another one, you know, because we were covering different areas that we were bouncing from in a larger event. And so you can just take the X32 and you throw it on. Now you have a whole mixer sitting over there, just sending lines in. But if you need to do something on that end, you can. So so that's another, you know, kind of way to think about those types of things. Anything with Dante they can publish to Dante will actually work. So there's also, as a note, you probably don't need this because you're probably doing a show, but they do make Dante melt boxes as well. So if you're working in politics or big events and you're giving press a bunch of stuff, they have Dante enabled, and I can't think of the brand name at the moment, but Dante enabled malt boxes, which is one to many, but it dramatically improves the quality of the audio because malt boxes tend to be the kind of the worst thing ever when it comes to sound. And so being able to get through an entire, get to a riser without having to do any analog, it makes a big difference. Next question.
Moving on, Stuart Fairweather of the panel here and coming out of Melbourne, Australia, as always, says, does anyone know an easy way to get a Lensbaby Composer Pro back to square after doing a tilt shift shot? Whoa.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Would you like a demonstration?
Can you feed us a demonstration?
Yes, I can. Because my model's asleep. So I've got the Composer Pro. Let me just open it up a little bit more so it'll be a little brighter. If I unlock it, I can actually push. So if I push the bottom of the lens, the signal will actually seem to move the opposite way sometimes. But it gives you very soft focus and it does like a tilt shift thing. But getting it to come back to center so I can focus, because I've got a music video that I'm doing in the next couple of months where we want all the background soft and have a single shot look as the lead singer moves through scenes describing events in his life. So we want to put all the background performers in the soft area and blurred, but the Lensbaby is a real easy way to do it, but it is a pain to get back to square after you've done a tilt shift shot.
Bill?
The way I do that is just get a matte box, put a piece of glass in there, buy a jar of Vaseline, do your soft focus stuff manually, and then swap out the glass as you go through. Lots of control, real easy.
Not the same look.
The thing that I would consider is experimenting with bellows, which is what you can get. The bellows will give you a lot more technical, and they can start at $50 or $100 and go up. So you don't have to get really expensive ones. I'm looking right now at the NovaFlex, which does pass the Canon information to the front lens. So I may try to test that sometime soon. So we'll play with that, but I'm going to be using it for macro live streaming. But I think that bellows is another way to play with that idea, possibly. Mickey, and then Jeffrey, and then John.
Do you need to do the move live, Stuart? Like during a take?
No, that's why I want to be able to get it back square between shots when it's
gotcha.
When I need it square, it is square, and yeah.
Well, then would you be open to using another tilt shift lens aside from Lensbaby? Because Lensbaby is it's more of a play kind of lens as opposed to say like a Canon architectural tilt shift lens, which has actual guides so you can center it.
Yep. There is one that I might use instead, but this is one that I own, and I prefer to use gear that I have before going and renting stuff. So, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting look. So,
absolutely.
It's for a music video, so you can play around more than say for corporate customers.
Right. Absolutely. Jeffrey, and then John.
Wouldn't putting like a shim or something like that, like a little piece of plastic on the other side, so when you start pushing it back, it'll just have a hard stop? Wouldn't that work?
Maybe.
John Pruitt, and then Bill.
I'm gonna say take the lens off the camera and use a T-square.
But you have to get back to it quickly, right? Or do you need time? Or do you have time between shots to get it back to zero?
We'll have time.
Okay.
Yeah, T-square will work great then.
T-square might be the easiest one.
Go ahead,
Thank
Bill,
you.
and then Courtney.
Yeah, actually, as I remember those Lensbaby things, all you really need is that the mount and the top barrel focus adjustment need to be completely parallel. So I would imagine you could build some parallel surface thing, like a little gentle thing, and just press it down into perfectly parallel, and that might get you back to zero tilt.
Good, Courtney. And then we'll move on.
Get a first surface mirror adapter to screw on the front of it, point it at your subject, and shine a laser pointer from your subject at the lens, and then adjust it, have someone else adjust it until the reflecting dot hits the laser. Perfect alignment every time.
The only thing I have a concern with that is a laser pointing at a camera.
Camera sensor, yeah.
Well, that's why I say you put you point it and then you screw the mirror on the front of it, which blocks the laser from the lens, but keeps it parallel to the front surface of the Lensbaby.
Go ahead, John, and Steve, and then we'll move on. We're a little.
Another option I thought of is you could just get a PVC pipe that has the inner diameter the same as the outer diameter of the lens, and then just put the lens inside of the tube, and that's a really quick way of doing it.
Go ahead, Steve, and then we'll move on.
I like that one.
Yeah, I was actually going to go a similar way, but I was going to say use something like that, like a clip type thing that you clip on, and the Lensbaby has the back part, the middle part, and the little narrow middle part. You could clip it in between the base and the front of the lens to try and level the two out.
Probably print something.
Like a piece of rubber or something.
Or you could print it. Figure out exactly what you need, probably at different settings, and then have little shim, back to
shim.
printing,
That's a good
but
term
like
for it,
printing something that is just that you pop on that's going to give it a regular thing.
Clip it on, clip it
Printing
off.
it. Yeah, printing it would also mean getting my 3D printer to work. That's the fun part.
See, there you go. All right, next question. Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Moving on, Joe Washer of Atlanta says, I'm working on a project with quite a few people. We're thinking about using Microsoft Teams to help coordinate things virtually. Any experience or tips for doing this, and whether it be in Teams itself or another app?
Go ahead, John.
So my company uses Teams a lot, and I find it to be a very good product for sharing and coordinating teams. It's not a good thing for doing an event like this, but if you've got a group of people working together, it's got ways to put in wikis. You can share files. It is basically a communication platform built on SharePoint. So if you want to embed an Office document, if you're a Microsoft shop, this is the proper communications tool to use for that.
Sky.
Yes, second that. Just know that Zoom is a great video conferencing software. It is not a complete suite of tools, and Teams is a complete suite of tools that they've homogenized and then added some new functionality to how to collaborate across those different, share issues. Thank you.
Great. And also, again, a reminder, we probably don't have enough general questions to get to the top of the hour right now. We have plenty of questions to start, so we may start early if we don't get more of those questions. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that really don't think of Teams, though, like Zoom. The local TV station, when I do, everything's remote now, and when I interview city officials or whatever, they're doing it over Teams. And it's a horrible, horrible experience to be used as video conferencing in that way. But for business type stuff, it's great.
Next question.
Second to the last normal one we have, which is from Guy Cochran, and specifically for Steve Brazill. Money, no object. What camera or lens combo would Steve Brazill be shooting with?
Any camera that's one Alex would be absolutely fantastic for me.
One Alex? No, you're thinking too small. There's gonna be one Mickey. So there's a new one here.
Okay.
The Alex is $700, but a Mickey is $3,200.
I haven't been here long enough to
we have new denominations here.
Yeah, we have
one Mickey is $3,200.
Yeah,
and
see,
one
this
Alex
is what
is
the world
$700.
needs to go to is Mickeys and Alexes.
Yeah.
For me, that's interesting. Up until this past year, it would have been a 1DX latest version. It's an amazing camera with killer AF, but really right now I would love a couple of R5s. The Canon R5 to me, video stuff aside and all the complaints that are valid for what somebody's shooting, as a stills photographer, the R5 with the trinity of lenses that concert photographers use, which would be like a 16-35, a 24-70, and a 70-200, would be just awesome to me. I still shoot on a 5D4. This is a 5D4 as my webcam right now. But that camera for the price point to me as a stills photographer just can't be beat. But if somebody gave me a 1DX, I'd be really happy.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the Fuji GFX 100?
I've never shot with it. I have seen it in a photo pit. There are people that do use it in a photo pit. Have I heard anything about it? I'm just trying to think. Probably the only time I ever talked to anybody that was shooting a Fuji in a pit, their only complaint was speed of autofocus and tracking. And that's one of the areas to me that even Sony's done well on for on their latest bodies, but early on was really failing at in a concert environment. Whereas the Nikons and the Canons, the lock, the tracking system was so much better. Nikon specifically with their 3D focus, but I don't know. That'd be interesting.
That's great.
I'd actually, in all honesty, I'd love to get an old film camera and use it in a photo pit. Because we all grew up looking at the classic, rock photo pictures, and I would love to try and recreate some of that look with a classic photo camera.
Can you find some rolls of Tri-X?
Exactly. I think it'd be a blast.
I think I would rather spend a lot of time figuring out how to create a filter that would do that than actually shoot with it.
Still to this day, Silver FX Pro to me is where I go to get that effect. And if you take a Silver FX Pro, choose the 6th filter down, which is high structure smooth, put that on a layer in Photoshop on top of your color photo, and then change it to luminosity mode, and it's the most wonderful thing.
There's the tip for the day. All right, go ahead, Stuart.
If Steve can get away from his Canons, I would like to point out that K1000s are still cheap and still 100% reliable.
I was going to say that. I was going to say, hey, we'll get your K1000.
P30N is just as reliable, but a little bit newer and has a few little extra features, but no autofocus.
What was the last one that you mentioned?
Shot on film. A P30N. They're both Pentaxes.
Mm-hmm. There's part of me that wants to get there's part of me that wants to get a K1000, mostly because that was my first camera. Like that was my uncle gave me that. I had something like a 110 that was like some little box, but then my uncle gave me a K1000. I was like 12 or 13.
And my wife, when we got married, had a K1000, and we at one point, we'll never use this, and we got rid of it. And I'm beating myself up over it because I'd love to have something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Moving on to Maggie Barton Baird. And by the way, congrats, viewers and participants. We've got lots of questions suddenly. Maggie Barton Baird, Edmonton. Have you worked on or seen any awards events successfully move to virtual? We have a client looking to do an awards event virtually.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I've done a couple of corporate awards shows, so it hasn't been any major television stuff. And that was just massive coordination of doing it something like in Zoom with a list of the 4 nominees. And then I had a team that was ready to pin that to a separate feed into my switcher. So we were able to show the host, read the envelope, show a animation, and then cut right to the recipient. And it took a lot of planning but it was able to work, and they loved it.
Go ahead, Sky.
Yes. Also back to Teams within Microsoft, we did an event that was global and had probably 32 different guests coming on at different places from around the world. We had a host of 3 different hosts that were running the show, and we did it in a facility all 6 feet apart with no less than 16 humans managing the different functionalities of, I think we were connected to about 2,000 people around the world and had about 72 people throughout an hour's experience.
I think, go ahead, Roscoe.
I was going to say, if you're going to do it on Zoom, definitely pay attention to what Andy's going to show us in Zoom OSC. We did an award show, and just finding the people on the back pages because they didn't know who was, going to win the award beforehand. The presenters did, the web, just getting them up to the front screen so that you can click on them and show them to people is tremendously powerful in Zoom OSC.
The way we're doing it, of course, is heavy-handed, which is that we're talking about it, we're thinking about, we're having the opportunity to think about award shows, and but our approach is that basically we have a green room where we have all the folks that are going to be in it, and then we push them into, we push them all into point-to-points. So right before, so there's basically 2 sets of point-to-points. There's 10 computers on our end that are basically managing the people who are about to win and the people that are on deck. And then in the cloud, in a green room, there's more, not in the cloud, but in Zoom, in a green room that's shared, there is the next set behind that. So then what happens is this set wins, this one moves over, this one, we bring in another 5, and then they're ready to go. And so you're kind of doing this kind of tank track through the computers of the next in line and the ones that are there. And it gives you a couple minutes, to get the next set in. That's a big way to do it. The nice thing about it is that we can do 4-ups, and we've isolated audio. We can talk back to them and go, "Hey, your dog is barking," or mute each one individually. They're not in shared environments, and so it gives you the ability to really create a show. But it is the heavy iron version of the process. We are experimenting with the idea of doing it in the cloud. So building Zoom rooms in the cloud, and then having our Zoom rooms, meetings in the cloud, and then have our Zoom rooms join that meeting in the cloud to pull the person into the show. That way they can join a green room and be in their own little room the whole time. Anyway, but managing those in fast succession is definitely something we get to think about a lot this spring. So we'll probably be able to talk about it more as we actually do it, but we've calculated some pretty complicated ways of getting it done so that, again, we can do all the graphics. You can do all the super sources and jump, and you can cut between everybody really fast and still have a show and still have all the comms and all that stuff. Next question.
Doug Johnson in Orem, Utah says, I've used the Facebook portal Zoom trick but had inconsistent results. And if you haven't been around for a while, that's the presence of a portal will up your resolution in many cases. Last week it worked great during rehearsal, but didn't work for our actual events. Any thoughts?
I'm going to step away for just a second to just keep running with that question.
Okay, Guy, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I've done a lot of these and I haven't seen it to where it dips. So I asked him in the chat if he could expand on that, because what happens sometimes is if you don't pull, meaning make an active speaker on the other side, if you Zoom's so efficient, what it'll dish out is in gallery view, for example, if you make the windows smaller, it will only send or pull as big as the window is on the other side. So he's saying that it was full screen on the other side and he was sending 1080. So I'm up for doing some experiments afterwards if he wants to give it a shot again. But
I wonder if you have to literally talk into the portal enough for it to take it as the speaker, and that if that would register it to the fact that you've got a portal there and bump up. I don't know. We're just guessing here. Guy knows as much as anybody. Beiju,
Guy, didn't you say it had to be a specific portal?
No, all the portals work.
All of them, okay.
Yeah, I've tested. I have all of them here. I've tested every single. Well, actually, I take that back. The Portal TV does not have the app yet, so it does not work. But the 8-inch, the 10-inch, and the Portal Plus all work.
Okay, Beiju, and then Jeffrey. Go ahead, Beiju.
Yeah, not Portal specific, but I have had that experience with Zoom rooms in the past that sometimes it would not bump it up to 720 for a few minutes, And what we found was that switching the camera on and off and then basically forcing that camera on, sending some video on it and having someone pin it would sometimes push it through. For some reason, it would not do it. So you might need to have somebody maybe switch the camera on and off and then maybe pin it full screen on another screen, or
That's
maybe
kind of the
rejoin that
electronic
meeting.
version of it saying, hey, I'm here, pay attention to me, and reset everything based on the fact that I'm here. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Two factors. First of all, internet connection. I've been doing a lot of interviews, one-on-one interviews with people overseas, and the internet connection gets a little bit wobbly, so it will bump down to preserve the frame and the quality on that. The second thing is simply, if their camera isn't 720, you're not going to get a 720 video. So, and some of these people are running their webcams from their laptops, which is not HD 720 quality. It might be 480. So you'll get 480 at best.
Okay. And Alex is back. You're muted, I think, Alex.
I don't think I am.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Next question.
Moving on to Tyler Roberts of Chambersburg. There we go. Has anyone had experience with nanlite 27s on sale for $219 at B&H today?
I'm just trying to get it to pop up here. For some reason, it's going really slowly. We've had a lot of experience with the 25s, and I'm just for some reason having trouble loading it up. The mix pad. Yeah, I'm not familiar.
Can I jump in while you're doing
much.
that, Alex?
Yep, go ahead.
So when I went up and I visited our buddy Photo Joseph, he had some nanlite lights, a compact 100, and I've got the equivalent of it. It's the parent company. That same thing. I just looked at. You're talking about a B&H Deal Zone, and this was 60% off on B&H Deal Zone. So I can say the nanlite brand I like. I have not tried the 27, which looks to be a smaller RGB light, but the brand in general I like.
It's pretty much all I have right now. so I got two 68Bs right here. I've got a little one down below. I've got a 40 above me. My whole office is all nanlite. We've probably bought hundreds of nanlites at this point. So I have a lot of them, or they're all over the office. So I'm not familiar with the 27, but I'm pretty happy with it. You know, some of them can be, some of the less expensive ones can be a little bit, the dials can get whacked a little bit. They're a little sensitive to pressure. So, but you know, if you take care of them, they've worked really well for us. I mean, the price performance for us has been really good. But I'm not as familiar with, I don't have the 27. The LumaPad 25 is our standard issue for our smaller kits. So that's why we've bought so many of them. And so, but we've done bicolor, the 200Bs, 100Bs, 68Bs, 40Bs, some little one that's down behind me. We've gone through a lot of them in the last 3 or 4 months. So I brand wise, I think it's great. As Steve said, the 27 I'm not familiar with. Anyone else? Okay, next question.
James Babbitt of San Diego. Instead of recording the full spectrum of the human voice, a recording sounds more natural by using the low cut filter on the mixer. How does cutting the bass make recording sound more natural than recording the whole audio range?
You want to talk about that? Yeah, go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill.
Yeah, a lot of times there's a lot of, especially when a microphone is up close, there's a lot of low end rumble that we don't hear naturally, because you only notice that when you're really up close to the mic due to proximity effect that is amplified. So when you cut off that low end rumble that you don't hear during natural, talking to someone face to face, then it feels more, it sounds more natural.
Whoops. I think you're muted, Alex, but you're still
Sorry.
muted.
Next, good, Bill, then we'll move on.
Yeah. Generally, bass frequencies, low frequency energy takes much more oomph. That's why big stereos or big concert systems have lots of power. It's really to move those bass drivers. Higher frequency drivers are much more efficient. So when you're listening to a person and you're 15 or 20 feet away from them, you're not getting the same low frequency that if they were literally right next to your ear talking to you. So I think we're used to that for people. Most of what carries the information in speech is those little fricatives and the sibilants and the, is this an S or an F? Those are two completely different sounds, but they're subtly distinct. So that's what makes you intelligible.
Next question.
Moving on to Ernest Floyd, and Ernest comes to us from Bastrop, Louisiana. Please explain balanced versus unbalanced audio cables.
I'll make a swing at it, and then Mickey can correct me if if I don't hit it quite right. But unbalanced is basically your audio signal. It just goes through. The problem with it is that as that wire goes past other things, electrical sources and coiling and anything else, it can pick up noise. So it picks up these little bits and bobs of noise and hiss and other things as it's picking it up because of the electromagnetic of whatever it's going past. What balance does is it takes that signal, it inverts the signal, and it sends it out along. So it has two signals basically that are going out together all the way across that line. And what they're doing is they're both picking up the same. They're exactly out of polarity, and they go across. When they get to the other side, it reverses one of them and sums them together. And when it sums those together, the noise is going different directions, right? When it gets inverted, and it basically the only thing the audio that was inverse to each other in the wavelength becomes the same. So it strengthens that, and the noise is going the opposite direction, and it basically cancels it out. And so that's how you get a balanced signal, and that's why it gets rid of a lot of the noise. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, you're close.
Close. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, as an electronics engineer, the input. Oh, I'm still hot. I'm sorry, guys.
Keep going.
I'm trying out a new
We're running out of
mic.
time.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
All right. Let me just say that what you have in a balanced situation, you have a differential input with balanced input, and anything that comes equally down both wires is canceled out, and anything that is comes down one wire different from the other, it's a differential amplifier. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what all balanced inputs go into. So anything that's on both wires, which would be a stray signal going into the cable, will be taken out. And anything that is different between the two, which is your signal from your microphone, will go through okay. So that's how it works.
Great. Bill? And then we'll move on.
Balanced systems, if you keep everything
you gotta go
balanced,
really fast, Bill, like 15 seconds.
Balanced systems are always better because they will eliminate hiss and noise and hum and stuff like that. Unbalanced systems will not. Always use balanced audio when you can.
Okay, next question.
Greg Yetz of Gridley, Kansas is in next with what small portable digital audio recording device should I use together with my DSLR, Tascam, or spend the extra money for a Mix Pre 3?
I would, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would. I think
you're asking the wrong. Wrong team. I mean, the most important part. Yeah, go ahead. All I'm gonna say is the most important thing that you can possibly have with your thing is a preamp. The preamp, and so you want a high quality. That's why you're buying it. Otherwise, just push it straight into your DSLR. So if you're gonna get a cheap preamp, then why bother? And so anyway, so I think that specifically the Mix Pre 3.2, which is going to give you 32-bit float, takes a lot of stress away. And I get that Zoom has 32-bit float too. Preamps are not the same. They're not the same. I've tested both of them. They're really not the same. So that's the thing that I would, I measure the cost of audio equipment by time. How much time does it take me to fix things? So because that's more valuable to me than a differential between $300 and $600 or $800 or whatever. Anyway, Mickey, because I pay for it all the time. Mickey, and then Stuart, and then Steve, real quick.
Yeah, I have I think half a dozen Tascams of different models, like this 60D, 70D, 680. Yes, the preamps are very different. For the price, the Tascams are really good value for the price. You get a decent preamp set of preamps for what you pay for, but just know that in a couple of months you will want to step up. So it's like a buy once, cry once kind of thing.
Okay, 10 seconds, Stuart and Steve. We're gonna move really fast through this question because we've got a bunch of them, of course, stacked up. We were really light, and then we're not.
That's a DR70D. Their preamps are fantastic, but if you've got a job that requires a lot more audio than you can do and control yourself, get an audio person to record it for you. I can recommend Sarah Tarr if you're in Melbourne.
Okay, great. Steve?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, if there's one thing I've learned, it's yes, you got to go with your budget, but I've got a PreSonus that's now at PreSonus for the second time in a year, and each time it's offline for 40 days while I have to send a ticket over text, and then I send it to them, and it's a 2 to 3 week repair time, so I'm without this device over a year a lot, and I'm using a backup audio device. So there is no substitute for just saying my time's worth more money than that. I don't want to use my backup gear as my primary. Buy a good device. I'm looking at a Mixpre 3 myself.
Yep, and make sure not. You can save some money by getting the Pre, but the version 2 is going to have the 32-bit float
Right.
and the ability to go to noise assist if you want. Next question.
With lots of votes in the last 20 minutes or so, Aaron Parecki's question from Portland here on the panel today is, can Zoom be set up to not make the screen share audio quieter when someone is speaking? For example, for sharing a video using screen sharing with people talking over it.
Audio ducking?
I can clarify the question. It seems that Zoom is doing audio ducking by default, and I would like to turn it off.
I think that it, for some reason, I thought that if you use the advanced setting and you share computer audio there, rather than in the share screen, that I think that it doesn't get affected by auto ducking. I think that's a different pipeline. I'm not 100% certain.
Doesn't seem like we get ducked very much on the show here because
we
we
have
occasionally
earpieces.
talk over. Yeah. Oh.
No, it's the way you fix it. I mean, the analog way is when there's no echo cancellation going on, you get full duplex audio. And so the wetware version is get everybody with an earpiece. The second wetware version is get everyone to mute. And the third thing is to, I think that if you use the advanced settings inside of the screen share and do computer audio, I believe that, I believe that it will work, but I'm not 100% sure. You've already tried that?
Yeah, my initial testing was even with computer doing the audio sharing in the screen share setting, as soon as somebody starts talking over it, it does end up ducked in the recorded program.
And you want some background music? Is that the issue?
Basically, yeah.
I don't have a solution. John, really quick.
Just route around the problem. Do it as a video feed for the audio and feed your audio in that way.
No, still same problem. I mean,
I think it still does the ducking with people's mics as well.
Are you sure nobody was playing through speakers?
Yeah, I was just doing this in a closed environment.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
I did an interview.
Go ahead.
I did an interview the other day where somebody pulled out a guitar and started playing. I think it might have to do with the fact of the frequency range changing immensely, that all of a sudden Zoom's going, wait a minute, I need to start thinking about these frequencies. That might be what's going on with music and the ducking issue, but that's just a pure guess. I'd have to do some testing.
Sorry, we don't have a better answer. Next question.
Gregory Wheeler in Maryland is up next with, I call my ISP Verizon and ask them to for a baseline to fix my gigabit network speed. And they had no idea that what I was talking about. Is there another term I could use to fix my slow internet speeds when trying to stream an event? Also, the modern Alex recommendation does not work with Verizon.
The modem.
The modem. Oh, well, that's
right.
right.
I don't know what ones are compatible with Verizon, because Verizon uses a much different pipeline than everybody else. So I don't know which ones are there. I mean, the bottom line is my tendency is to send them speed test results that show that it's less than, and if that's the thing, that a speed test is usually the thing that is going to tell you what those are. You can definitely get software that will do it and test it all the time and give them a sample every 5 minutes if you want to. And then usually my response is, if they don't fix it, then I start tweeting it. So I find that tweeting the results and tagging them has been, for me, it's been effective, but of course I have a slightly different Twitter handle. Anyone else? No hands. Okay, next question.
Well, actually, can I join in?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I had a client actually who had a similar type of issue with constant internet issues, and we just set up a small packet capture ping running across to a network somewhere else, so that we could actually pull logs and send it to the particular ISP, which in this case was also Verizon, and show that there was downstream latency. And they moved us to a different switch and solved it.
That's great.
But they wanted to see those numbers first.
Now we're gonna now back up. We've tried to start our hours on the top of the hour rather than, so we're going to move these questions that we have right now that came up a little late after we were running out of questions. So we're going to try to come back to them a little bit later, but we're going to go ahead and jump to, we will jump to the ATEM questions right into it. So we have, Aaron, I asked specifically to come. Aaron's been doing a lot of YouTube videos for quite some time on the ATEM, and so I felt like if we could get Aaron to come on, a lot of us are using ATEM. So I think that this is we have Aaron here as our special guest. We also have a lot of people here that are pretty familiar with them. So Aaron, do you want to say anything about the ATEMs before we get started with questions, or just jump straight into the questions?
I don't know if I have much more to say than I've already said on all my videos, switchers. But they're great little things.
And if you haven't seen Aaron Parecki's videos on YouTube, they're some of the best on the ATEM. So it's definitely definitely worth doing. So worth watching. So we have so many questions. I'm afraid we're going to fall behind. So we're just going to jump into them, start answering questions for the ATEM. We've got a lot of them stacking up. So go ahead. First question.
First question comes from Dan Huber in Erie, Pennsylvania. Can the Facebook portal be a source into an ATEM Mini? Would want to switch to it in Zoom to get the 720p.
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Guy.
Yeah, I believe the Portal Plus, its USB-C port could take an adapter that goes out to HDMI, and that, of course, could go into an ATEM.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you want to be careful as to which adapter that you get. So it's the Portal Plus and the 10-inch that have the USB-C out. But the two that I have here right now, which is a USB-C splitter, is not supported. And the Apple USB-C to HDMI adapters are also not compatible. So be very aware if those are what you have and it's not working. That's why. And they do have a list of some simple ones from Monoprice and Anchor and Lenovo that you can get and make it a source into your ATEM.
And the question is it out? Do you want to get it? Oh, as a source. Okay. Yep. Absolutely. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Aaron.
And my question is would the 720p be triggered, because the ATEM is going to wipe out the portal's personality. So I don't know that Zoom is going to recognize it and push it to 720p.
I don't think
as long as it's an attendee in the meeting, it's going to do the bump. And then I'm guessing he's wanting the output, right? The USB-C output, the gallery view or active speaker view. Yeah. So then it would just come in HDMI. And you can choose that, so in the back end, there's something called a collaboration device tab that will appear, and you can choose what you want to appear on that external screen. So if you wanted something else there, that's where you go. You don't do it on the portal itself because you won't see the setting. It's on the other back end.
Aaron?
I was just going to say, in general, the way to think about these is the ATEM is only going to be able to accept HDMI sources. So the way to answer the question is, can you get HDMI out of whatever device you're talking about? Yeah. And if you can, then it will probably work with the ATEM.
The ATEM's it's pretty robust as far as you can send it a lot of different things, and because it has the Teranex converters for each one of the. I have to admit, I'm old enough to know what the original Teranexes cost and what they did and how big they were and everything else, and the idea that you have little frame converters in every input in a $300 device just seems magical. So anyway, next question.
John Pruitt of Huntersville said, what is the most useful but least used feature of the ATEM Mini in people's opinion?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the macros with the run to A and run to B, so you can throw stuff around. I don't think people appreciate that enough, the power of being able to move a keyframe. Essentially, you just throw something in one size, one position, and run it to the next or back to full screen. Really cool feature. I actually have a video. I'll throw it in the chat. You can see how to do it. I think Aaron has a video as well.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the API, the remote controllability of it just becomes, like we've been a bunch of kits that we just sent out. We didn't even expose the switcher to them. It was just a box inside a kit that was, handling what it was doing is we're using it to shade the camera. So that's all we were doing with it, is so that we could basically have we we had a 6K, and then we had the ATEM, going into the 6K, and then remotely. So we're remoting into. We had a VPN set up within the kit, so we're able to remote into the box, and from there we're able to do all the shading in the camera. And then because it was an M1, we were also using the Bluetooth app that we can talk to the camera as well. But the main thing is being able to shade it, color it, autofocus, all those things for us was super powerful, and worth the price of admission by itself. Anything else, Aaron? Can you think of anything else that?
Yeah, I mean, the macros are honestly like a huge thing, and people, I think, often don't remember that that's actually built in there. But being able to record and script all of the stuff, and then being able to edit your macros in a text editor to really dial them in and get like the fine-grained control over what they're doing. Then you get buttons you can press to do amazing things in the ATEM. The other one that I was thinking of was, it's kind of a silly thing, but with the media pool, you can do capture still, and people also forget this button exists. And if you do that, well, it's going to capture my screen now, but I'll switch my camera really quick, tap the capture still button, and now in my media pool, I've got this that I can just drag over to my program, right? And now I can switch to my still shot and fake being in a Zoom meeting, fake paying attention. But that capture still button, it gives you a lot of possibilities of like, grabbing a frame of a presentation that someone shared in and then using that as a title later, or things like that.
That's great. I haven't even used that ever. That's great. Next question.
A. Mitchells from Washington is in here with a question for Aaron. Aaron, what are your best practices for getting audio into the 3.5 millimeter stereo jacks on the ATEM Mini from a mic, and he specifies electric, condenser, and or dynamic, or in from a mixer? Also, what are your suggestions for mixing 3.5 millimeter stereo and pro audio gear in general in either direction? And he says, thanks for all your great advice over the years.
Thanks. That's a lot of questions. I'm gonna give a short answer here, and I'll let some other people chime in as well. But in general, I find it's just a lot simpler to run audio through the camera if you can. So run audio into a camera using whatever device that requires, whether it's a mic direct into the camera or some sort of XLR audio face for the camera, and that really just simplifies like the chain of where the audio is happening, and it also comes in sync by default that way. And if that's not an option, then yeah, running through some sort of external mixer usually works just fine into the 1/8 inch jacks with the ATEM. I will say I have had sometimes really weird ground loops happening where I get a lot of buzz on the line, and then I either try to just avoid that setup or use one of those little isolator things. But I find it's a lot simpler just to route all the audio through cameras.
Good, Steve.
Yeah, so in that case, are you running audio out of, like, if you're using a Mix Pre 3, are you running an audio line out of that into the camera, or are you bypassing your interface?
Yeah, so I have this microphone is just a little one with the 1/8 inch out, not powered even. But on my other set, I have a Zoom F6, the new little 32-bit Zoom, and I run that into a camera, and then the camera into the ATEM, and that way the camera just sees an audio interface, and the ATEM just sees HDMI audio, and there's a lot less moving parts, a few moving parts there.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
I was just going to throw in one other nice thing is when you go into the 3.5, split it into two separate, helps if I show what I'm talking about, two separate tracks. So you get a left and a right, and then you can pan each individual to where you want to be. Because a lot of times microphones will come in only left or only right, but by splitting it, you can get it to go across both again.
One of the things I liked about doing it with a camera, especially if I'm hosting an event and I'm using my camera, is running the audio into the camera makes it easy for me to set audio follows video. So then when I switch myself away to run the event, I move away and I know that I'm being cut off. Like my audio is now, and I'll have a mixer in front of that. I don't have a lot of other things, but my local audio I know is going to be removed from the signal. So it gives you that feature by pushing into the camera. But know that you also need to turn it off if you're going to use it all the time. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, the built-in preamps on the ATEM Mini aren't that spectacular. They're usually
such a nice way of saying it.
they're usually quite noisy, especially when you have to run microphones that require a lot of gain, like say dynamic microphones or say something like an SM7B, which you really have to push. So for that, like I would definitely run a separate mixer and feed line out of the mixer into the ATEM Mini instead of a microphone level signal. But if possible, like say Steve was asking about the mix pre, I would just go straight feed the mix pre straight into the computer as an interface instead of running through the ATEM if you don't have to have the audio go through the ATEM, like if you're not recording on it. In terms of getting a mic, like the ATEM can power an electret microphone that requires 3 to 5 volts, but it can't run full-on condenser microphones that require 48-volt phantom power. You can get phantom power supplies that are just a pass-through, but again, you're running through the same issue with running microphone level feeds into the ATEM. And again, like A. Mitchell was also asking about dynamic microphones, same issue with that.
Next question.
Moving to Steve Brazill from the panel today. Second hour looking at getting an ATEM Mini and wondering where is the best place to learn to change the PIP, picture-in-picture, to display a side-by-side two-up shot instead of a cornered PIP.
Anyone want to go ahead, Aaron, and then Courtney?
That's a great idea for a video. I'll probably do a video on that now. I don't have one yet, but the thing you're looking for is the upstream key. So any tutorials talking about how to use the upstream key, you'll be able to then follow those tutorials to figure out the pieces to make that actually work.
Next question.
Moving on to Brian Bavado, and Brian comes to us from Detroit, Michigan, and he asks, can you discuss controlling multiple ATMs from a remote location via a public IP?
So go ahead. You want to talk about Aaron?
Yeah, this is something I've done quite a bit, and I'm working on getting my head around turning this into tutorials for people. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of networking jargon and stuff to actually teach people how to do this. I will say that I would prefer doing this over VPNs rather than directly over public internet with public IPs. VPNs make a lot of the steps actually simpler in the end. So if you can get sort of everything into your VPN, then nothing matters that it's on the public internet at that point. It all is treated as a local network, and things just sort of work like you would expect if they were all in the same room.
One of the things to know is that you can, it's a little dangerous to do, but you can create multiple instances of the ATEM software on the same computer and open them up and just give them different IPs, and you can actually control multiple switchers, with just multiple instances, but you have to actually copy the app. So you copy the app a couple times, you can open the app a couple times, open in the same computer. And it's not really, because there's so little horsepower being used, it has worked for us in the past. But that really only works with VPNs. but we've done ones where we've controlled 3 different ATEMs from 3 different cities, with one computer that's feeding back into our system effectively. Go ahead, Aaron, and then Sky.
Yeah, the other thing I'm a big fan of is the software called Companion, BitFocus Companion, if you're going to search that. And that's a way to control multiple ATEMs and give yourself buttons on an iPad or on a physical device like a Stream Deck. And that is a less hacky way to control multiple ATEMs. It has it sort of built in. It doesn't really care that there's multiple.
Right.
And it can control other things too. I've tried that desktop app copy trick, and it worked once, and then it didn't work the next time. So I'm not really comfortable relying on that.
It scares me.
Companion is
the
a great
Companion will
piece of
work. Yeah,
software.
if you're just switching. I mean, the thing is, if you have to control it, like for us, we had to control a lot of things inside the switcher for each one.
Well, macros.
And, yeah, well, not Mac, but shading cameras, that kind of thing. So it worked for us flawlessly, and it scares me every time I do it. And I don't do it anymore. I just put new computers in because doing that scares me. It never broke, but it always scared me that I was doing that, and I was like, I'm never going to use this in a major event. Sky, and then Jeffrey.
Well, I was just going to ask, do you rename and create for first instance 01 and then camera 2, or do you rename the app?
We just had 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yep, thank you.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, Companion is a great app, and it actually made me think of that previous question, because with Companion and a PTZ camera, the biggest problem with the split screen is one person has to shift over. But if you have like a PTZ camera, you can set up Companion to bring up the picture-in-picture on one side, and then you move over to and then the camera moves you over to the other side. So that might be the solution to that one.
Okay. Next question.
Moving to Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania, who asks, ATEM Mini or Pro, and I suppose or ISO, do I need Pro for just a couple of sources out to a Zoom meeting?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. If you are sure you're only ever going to be using it with Zoom, then no reason to get the Pro, because the USB out's what you're going to be using for that, whether you have the Pro or the regular one. I will say, though, you may find yourself very quickly realizing that you are wanting some of the additional features, at which point the additional cost is not actually that much, and it's often worth it. The biggest thing to know about using it with Zoom, the regular Mini, is that you don't get the multi-view. So if you don't have the ability to see until you switch live what you're feeding to Zoom. So that's the other thing to keep in mind there. If you've only got like 2 cameras, you probably don't need multi-view. But as soon as you've got 2 or 3 cameras and a screen share you want to bring in, and you want to start doing fancy graphics mixed in, then the multi-view becomes really helpful, because then you can see that before it goes into Zoom.
Go ahead, Steve.
But following up on that, didn't we also talk about earlier that if you are going into Zoom, you're better off to not run your screen share through the ATEM, that you're better off to run it as a standard screen share because you're going to get the resolution advantage?
Well, we spent a lot of time getting to 1080p here specifically, so I don't have to do it. And the reason that I don't like it is because I think it changes the entire state of it's a state change inside of Zoom. So suddenly it takes over everybody's screen every time you do it. And it's a really pain, to do that if you want to do anything fluidly. So, and I'll be able to show this on Saturday, but I have my little setup here right now that it's kind of half done is 2 ATEM minis, and one is feeding sources into one output. The other one has got a telestrator, and I can switch between them, and I can kind of talk through things. And so, but the main thing is I want to be able to jump between an application, a whiteboard, a keynote document, all of those things I want to be able to do while I'm talking and just smacking through it. And so then I can do all those things in the ATEM. Screen shares would be very uncomfortable because some of my inputs are cameras and some of my inputs are screen shares. And so you can jump between all of those things if you feed them all into the ATEM and then feed it out. Now, if you want that resolution, the other thing to remember that you can do is take QuickTime and set QuickTime up as a make movie, which is one of your options, and make your input, the ATEM Mini is going into QuickTime. Then you screen share the QuickTime as long as you don't roll over it. And what it'll do is gives you the ATEM. When I do training, before I had 1080p, and when I go into somebody else's Zoom, I do it that way, which is that I screen share QuickTime because it does a bezel-less video input from your ATEM Mini. And now you can do all the cutting that you're looking for from the ATEM Mini, but you get the resolution, you just lose the frame rate. So
your entire Zoom at that point is just a screen share.
Yeah, Zoom is screen sharing my ATEM Mini switching into QuickTime, which is then going out. And so, like, if you looked at one post-production world when I was speaking there and talking about motion or whatever, I needed the resolution because you needed to see the actual output. Now, the cool thing about that also is that the record that I did for that was in 4K. so I literally had a constellation feeding into QuickTime and then being screen shared in. So I was able to record ISOs on HyperDecks and do all so I have a full show that's done at full resolution at 4K. And then I'm able to, so I have that record on my end. But what you saw on screen share was the lower resolution that's more interactive. So
one quick follow-up, if I can. I've got a workshop coming up in April, and I'm looking at an ATEM Mini just for that reason. And I've been debating, do I want to switch between my camera and a screen share or just run everything through the ATEM as a camera? And I guess my question is, if I run Keynote through the ATEM in like we're doing now, and I'm just hitting buttons, but it's technically a webcam input, will those slides generally look okay, or if it's 720p, Zoom can lower it to 320?
Well, if you have a Zoom room join or a portal join, then you're going to get 720p. But what I will say is that if people can't read your keynote slide, at 640 by 360, then it's a design issue. You know, like every slide that you ever make should be readable at 640 by 360, because that means that it's, you know, so, and I know that you know that, but a lot of people don't. They put lots of little text and weird stuff in it and everything else. And really you want to think about things in you know, wider things. So go ahead, Aaron, and then Sky.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, is like if you find yourself needing 1080 to get your text crisp, you probably have text that's too small. And the only exception to that, I would say, is like when you're screen sharing live coding, for example. So I do workshops where I'm typing stuff on the command line, showing little bits of code. And for those, you do end up with relatively small text. I make the font size bigger anyway, because that's what you do. But it still is pretty small, and it was too much for Zoom when it was compressed, and I was getting a lot of complaints early on. This was also back in like April last year when they had to like suddenly clamp down on everything. But that's why I started switching to actually screen sharing in Zoom for those, and then using, but I still show graphics on my webcam through the ATEM, like a break timer or a even just sort of quick large illustrations that I can do on like an iPad where the resolution doesn't matter. So,
and Steve, I would absolutely get a Zoom room or a portal or talk to someone here to join your thing for a minute to make sure that you're getting 720p. And then I would design the show around 720p. And I would absolutely use a switcher. And I wouldn't, and I would either do my little weird roundabout way to do it, or I would, but and the other thing is, as far as Mini or Pro, the killer thing is that the Pro is going to give you your it's going to give you your multi-view, so you can see what's actually going on. Like right now, I'm on a Mini because I'm trying to constrain myself to a Mini for my little kit that I'm building for future reasons. And the biggest problem I'm having is that I can't tell what the iPhone's doing that I hooked up.
I'd probably do the ISO anyway. I mean,
yeah,
for the cost difference, I might as well get separate ISO.
So I would get, if I bought new ones. I mean, the Mini is great when you have. I bought all of these because of these camera controllers, so I didn't need anything else. And if I was a business person just doing presentations, I would absolutely have a Mini, and I would absolutely just be cutting between things because I know what I'm cutting to. But if I'm doing any kind of refined video production, I would get the Pro or the ISO. Sky, and then Guy. And
yes,
we'll
you nailed exactly what I was going to say. It's the price difference for getting a secondary monitor for that camera you're going to use just to see what it's giving you. You've got it right there in the Pro. So Pro is your starting level. ISO is an option.
Good Guy.
And then Steve, if you're able to use your iPad as your keynote source, you can be drawing with the pen and marking in things. It makes it really slick for learning to be able to use keynote slides that way, where you can hop between whatever you want.
And one of the things I'll show you a little later, I just got a new Wacom tablet, and I'm using that as a telestrator. And that what's nice about that is that it sits on top of. So I have my Wacom tablet is got a screen on it. I guess they just made one that's only $300 and some instead of $1,000 or something. And I'm testing it. It works great. And what it is that this is like one of those things. I have a Mac Mini that is outputting into the switcher. The switcher output is going out into as the source for the Wacom tablet. I'm then taking I have another Mini that is all just white, and that one's there. Anyway, so you fill the screen with whatever you can draw on that's just pure white, and you can draw it on black, and basically you luma key that over top, and then use the fill as a color. Just you can make it one of the colors in the ATEM. What you end up doing there is that's a telestrator. And the cool thing about that telestrator is that it is not you're not confined to Keynote. It's any input that's going into the Mini you can draw on, and so you can draw on things. And when you think about camera stuff, for instance, you can take the camera tap. This is the way I use it a lot, is when I'm training people on shooting, I can do a camera tap and I can draw and say, this is your nose room and this is where the light's coming through, and see, and you can draw on it. It is life-changing. And I had to tear it all apart, and I decided to, in my office, because I have a bigger constellation at the house, but in my office I'm trying to do it with Minis as a kind of a constraint. And so I have and I'll show that more on Saturday. It might be next Saturday, because Saturday I might not be here anyway. So go, Beju.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a comment on that. If you're using the ISO or the Pro and you're trying to record on it, you can't use it as a webcam input. So if you want to do the recording on it and then also bring it into Zoom, you need a second capture device to bring the program out via the HDMI. Then you use the multi-view as well. So you just need to work out what works for you.
You can turn it into a really complex mess. All right, next question.
Joe at Alpha Creative in Gainesville is in with our next question. Aaron, how much easier is your setup for biking gear to an event when events return?
Yeah, great question. He's referring to my video on YouTube from, I think now 2019. I did a behind the scenes look at my event rig that I bike everything to. So I bike it around to events around Portland and film. And it's like a 4U flight case with with a TV studio, ATEM TV studio in it, and a hyperdeck and a bunch of other stuff. And gosh, I can't wait for events to come back because man, that is a lot smaller now. With ATEM Mini Pro or the ISO, that's what I'll be bringing to events, giving me 4 recorders there, and the encoder is built in. It's just, man, it's so much smaller. So yeah, when events return, I'm looking forward to doing another my new bike rig using the ATEM Mini Pro because it's going to look a lot slicker.
That's great. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather, the panel in Melbourne, says, Aaron, referring to your Pi streaming bridge video, have you found if it's possible to go the other way from a non-Blackmagic designed streaming device out to a Blackmagic device streaming bridge, as an example, the generic U-Ray HDMI to IP box?
So the streaming bridge is made specifically for the ATEM Mini Pro and ISO to stream to it. And the question is whether Blackmagic has intentionally limited it for market reasons or whether it's more just sort of an engineering accident that happened, where it's easier for them to just hard code everything to work with whatever the ATEM Mini Pro is sending and not have to jump through hoops to make sure it works with any encoder. That said, I have been talking with somebody who has been taking a look at the on-the-wire protocol of what goes on and making other things be able to stream to it, and he did get it to work with OBS. However, it required changing OBS and recompiling it from the source. So he's working on documenting that.
A bit complex there.
The interesting thing that tells me is that it may not be an intentional thing Blackmagic was trying to limit, and it was more just they just hard-coded a bunch of values. And if the thing on the other end can stream those hard-coded values, which are like not part of the spec, then it would work. So he did get it to work. So we'll see how that plays out. Definitely is not going to be supported by Blackmagic. Definitely not something that is going to be easy to use with a bunch of different hardware, but it might be doable if you really need to.
Stuart?
Yeah, the reason for the question is just for those of us who are out as a single camera, it's just easier to set up the HDMI to IP boxes than it is to carry an ATEM, a power supply, all of that sort of stuff. It's just one box that connects. It would just be a simpler workflow for single camera shoots.
I totally agree, and I think that's actually a reason that I wouldn't be surprised if Blackmagic makes a device that does exactly that. It's just the H.264 encoder. It's in the form factor of probably the streaming bridge. Like, I would not be surprised if they do that at some point because that is a perfect use case for that.
Next question.
Adam Taylor is in from Providence, I assume Rhode Island, with I seem to have always have grounding and digital noise issues with the 3.5 millimeter inputs on the ATEM. He's tried ground lifts and separate power sources. Any robust solutions out there?
Other than embedding in the camera. So I mean, you're not dealing with an ATEM, you're dealing with unbalanced audio, and so it's just a constant issue. Go ahead, Bill.
If it is truly a ground loop, that often happens when you have more than one piece of equipment plugged into two different legs of a power supply, and then that is coming through and causing ground loops. The quickest way to test, I don't know if you can do it with your ATEM Mini, but if you can get it on DC or battery power as much as possible, you may find, because battery power, if it's a true AC ground loop, going on battery power should eliminate it if you do it at the right points. That's one way to check through things.
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Ray.
Yeah, just in case you may be powering your different sources from different, say, circuits in your home or office, I would try to keep them together and within one circuit, just to see if that could eliminate the possible, multiple points to ground, and also keep your unbalanced cables as short as possible.
Good, Ray.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is use a humbucker. They're 60, 70 bucks, but they do work for unbalanced lines. And I found one on Amazon. I had a problem with having two things here in my room on two different circuits and was getting hum, and the humbucker fixed it, no problem. And they were unbalanced, or line level lines.
Next question.
Moving on to James Babbitt of San Diego. Where would new users find tutorials for an ATEM Mini? I wonder who might have something like that.
I I have quite a few tutorials on my YouTube channel, and also John Barker from Here to Record.
Oh, sorry. Say it again. Who else?
John Barker, Here to Record. He has a couple of really good tutorials. Photo Joseph as well. If you search for ATEM Mini, you're going to find our 3 videos as the top results.
What's your YouTube handle for everybody?
My YouTube channel is my name, Aaron Parecki, or if you want to type it out, it's youtube.com/AaronPK.
Links in the chat.
Roscoe?
Aaron, is there a playlist that has the order in which you'd recommend people go through your videos? Because there's so many.
Yeah, there's a ton, and I do a lot of live streams where that's unstructured Q&A, where I do end up demonstrating a lot of stuff for beginners as well. But I do have a playlist that is just the ATEM Mini videos. I don't know if I would say it's necessarily ordered in like a lesson format, but it is at least all the ATEM videos. I'll drop a link to that in the chat.
Next question.
Okay, and this is the last one specifically tagged as second hour. Thomas Bauer of Atlanta asks, any suggestions for securing the network connection on an ATEM Mini Pro? Adding a router plus VPN is a bit clunky. And then I guess there are some others coming
in. There's, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
No, I mean, the router and VPN is a great solution, frankly, and I'm a big fan of these little I don't have one here, little travel routers. They're little devices about that big, and it's a VPN client on it. It can also be a VPN server, so you set one up at home or in your office. You have your remote one, dial into it. That's a great solution, and the advantage there is that it's USB powered, it's super small, and then it's just on your private network. So other than that, I don't plug it into the public internet, but other than that, it's gonna be fine.
One that I haven't tested because they were back ordered and I plan to test is the Amplify, which is Ubiquity's kind of home one, has one called the Teleport, which is just a little one that'll just tie you back into your home network. They look like they're $100, and I haven't had time to test them. So if you're using, one of the things I'm looking at is to have one of these little teleports that I just plug stuff into. It'd be a lot less expensive than what I've been doing, which is Meraki's. So we're kind of experimenting with those because the Amplify is relatively inexpensive. The mesh network that the Amplify does is worthless. Just in case you're wondering, I have it in my house. I'm getting rid of that. But having a home base and then having these little teleports may be a relatively inexpensive way to just plug it in and just have it just work. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if Thomas needs to be able to connect the ATEM Mini to a single computer locally, then he could just get a USB Ethernet adapter, a little dongle, and connect that directly to the ATEM, and only that machine can see that ATEM. So that's a pretty secure way to get it connected.
Yep. Next question.
Michael J. of New York City is in with high and most effective way to get a signal from the cable box into an ATEM. Once tried and received the blue screen of death message that I guess copy protection was in place.
Good, Stuart.
Actually, I was just going to ask whether that blue screen was the one for the copy protection, because that'll definitely stop it.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney. Oh, Courtney, we can't hear you. Courtney.
Sorry, my mouse was on another screen here, and I shouldn't be on that. But I'm doing it, as you can see. I use one of those game capture devices that claims it supports HDCP, but if you hold down the record button for more than 10 seconds, it suddenly will pass video through it, as well as being an inline recorder, and then you can feed that right into your...
What brand is this?
I've posted it before, and mine doesn't have a brand name on it. So if you look through the link back on Discord, I think you'll find
That's
it.
great.
It's a little square thing.
Yeah, that's great.
And it serves two purposes there, because it can record anything out of my TiVo or cable box, and also passes it along to the ATEM.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Aaron.
ITV will take the signal in off antenna or cable, remove the commercials if you download the right stuff, and push it out the back of a Mac Mini. It'll go right into an ATEM.
There you go. And Aaron?
Yeah, not that any of us should be encouraging copyright theft, but in general, this problem you're seeing is HDCP. And I've dealt with this a lot with my Chromecast device, because I use Chromecast to share browser tabs, where that's obviously my content. Like, I'm doing stuff in a browser. It shouldn't be copy protected. But the Chromecast, the old ones at least, will only output HDCP, and they don't negotiate. So I've had to deal with that. And what I found is you can look around and find HDMI splitters. And there's a couple of them that will, for some reason, remove HDCP. And they don't advertise that because they can't, because it's not something you can advertise and then have the HDCP logo on it. So you have to find ones that basically don't mention HDCP, and then cross your fingers that they do actually remove it. And it's a toss-up. The product links, like I've found ones that work, and then the products get updated. So even the links that I have for like ones I've bought don't work anymore, because they swap out the underlying product on the listing. So it's a toss-up, but you can find those that work sometimes.
That's great. Yeah, you have to make sure you have time to do it. But my approach oftentimes is to order all of them, find the one that works, and then send them all back. No, this one didn't work for me. Like, you send all the ones that didn't work back. I mean, it's kind of built into the Amazon return system or B&H. Next question.
Maranatha Spanish Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan is in with our next one, and their question is, the default setting for the macro is on create. Can you change it to run?
Go ahead, Guy.
Well, you have to create the macro first before you can run it. So it's like a script. Basically, when you hit create, it's keeping track of whatever mouse movements and clicks that you're doing, and it's creating an XML document essentially. And when you save it, you can then run it. So you have to create, and then you can run. It's like crawl before you can walk.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I'm assuming you mean that when you bring up the little macro window in the interface, it doesn't start at the run tab. I will say that is not the best interface in general to use for controlling things. I don't think I've used that ever, other than to record them. It's a lot nicer once you've got all your macros created to use other kinds of devices to run them. So that's everything from like the Stream Deck that I have on my desk here, or an iPad app with the Strata macros to be able to tap those buttons. And yeah, I know I wouldn't even bother with the run tab in the software control.
There you go. All right. And we have, there is a, yeah, go ahead. Next question.
I think there's one more that slipped in, if I'm reading it correctly, from Tim Peters in Tehachapi, California. Is there a way to record to the USB-C connector and also control the switcher with a PC through the same USB-C connector?
Go ahead, Aaron.
No. So USB-C is going to do one or the other, not both. But what you can do is put it on the network with your PC. So probably the easiest way to do that is a separate Ethernet adapter directly from the ATEM to your laptop. So you have two wires going between your laptop and the ATEM, or rather network wire to the ATEM, the USB to the drive you're recording on. But I also find that once you put your ATEM on your local network, it opens up a ton more possibilities. So I would recommend doing that sooner rather than later as well.
And I think that we've hit the end of our ATEM questions. If you have more, feel free to throw them in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and return to some of the questions that we had cut off to make sure that we started on time. So hopefully that helps. And again, remember that that Aaron has a whole channel that talks about ATEM among other things, but has a lot of videos. And so check those out. Hopefully we'll be able to drag Aaron in every once in a while and work with it, especially around launches and so on and so forth when we see new switchers. So thank you so much, Aaron, for jumping in and joining us for it. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next question.
Jeff Westman is in from Oakland, California with, I'm trying to use a Canon 70D with a wide angle lens for a live stream. I'm getting the autofocus box on the output. Any way to get a clean HDMI out without using the Magic Lantern hack? A manual mode would be difficult since I'm a one-man band. And if Magic Lantern is the fix, what are the potential problems of running that with your Canon DSLR?
Good, Stuart.
While everybody else was discussing ATEMs, I was actually looking at the Canon 70D manual for this question, and that is a really badly written manual. But going through it, I did notice there are options in the menu for switching on HDMI control from external device. You'd probably want to start by switching that off so that the TV or monitor you're connecting to isn't sending information back to the camera to turn on displays. If you do need to go to the Magic Lantern hack, Magic Lantern is pretty reliable now. It doesn't come with a warranty and you have to be careful to follow every instruction in setting it up. But I think you're going to end up going that way.
Go ahead, Beiju.
One other option would be to use the Canon webcam utility rather than going through a capture card. That should give you a clean input into the system. It will be a lower res input rather than the full HD, but it should at least get around the issue.
Roscoe?
Yeah, I was just going to say Magic Lantern is a side load, meaning that it actually it's like booting from a separate hard drive. You actually put it on the SD card, and then when you launch the camera, it boots off of using the information on the SD card. So it really doesn't violate anything on the camera, and it is very powerful.
Next question.
Thomas Bauer of Atlanta wants to talk DSLRs. Any experience with Olympus OMD line and that anyone can share?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Depending on which one, they are stupidly easy to use and the designs are elegant, but just be aware that Olympus has just closed down their camera side of things, so they won't be producing any more. So you may have issues with warranty support in the future.
Next question.
TJ Asher is asking, award season's upon us again. What are people expecting to see this year with the award shows? Do we think anybody actually learned anything last year regarding remote nominees and how they're presented or present themselves?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Pocket 6Ks are in extreme short supply.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're going to try to use. The unfortunate thing I found was, I don't know if they'll learn anything. I think that what I saw from the behind the scenes of the Emmys was the light sources were too small and they weren't really thinking about separating the position of those lights away from the cameras. Also, they very much underinvested in their audio. So people sounded really roomy and they looked really like flat, like they were, in a police lineup. And so I think that those were the big shortfalls with the last one. And so I think that I don't know if they've learned how to fix that or not. So it's hard to find, like we just built kits with Pocket 6Ks as I talked about. And it's hard like to do it really, really well. I think we were pretty happy with the results, but we couldn't do it all in one box. You couldn't roll it up. Like it had, the way we had our setup is that, we literally had little guide wires. So it was like just braided wire that we colored, and we said, hook this to the front of the tripod, because you had to set up a tripod and put a teleprompter on it and drop a camera on it. But that stuff was all kind of pre-built. You just kind of click, click, click. And then you basically, but we had hook a little wire on the front and pull it out. And at the end of the wire, put the chair, and then put a little this other wire across it at 90 degrees. And on end of that wire, and we had a little tape where you put it across, drop the light stands, and put the light stands up. And so there was kind of an instruction. That's a lot more work than what they're using for the Emmys and for a lot of these awards. So, but it looks so much better, like to do like real lighting and real setup, but it was a lot to do. Anyway, so that's, go ahead, Mickey. You're gonna say something?
Yeah, just the sort of remashing what Alex always repeats, like content is either easy to produce or easy to consume, never both.
And so, and then we used headsets like this one. And the main reason we did that is we can't control their room. So yeah, I get it's a headset and it's a little bit of a, you see it on air, but I think there's a lot of acceptability to it at this point. And the big advantage that we had was that the echo is greatly dropped from the rooms. There's a lot less for them to figure out whether it's a shotgun. A shotgun's going to pick up a room, a live room really, really well. Labs will do that to some degree. Headsets will barely pick anything up. If they're in a room that's relatively quiet and the settings are correct, they're gonna. And then when ours were run through the Mix Pre 3 with noise assist, so online it's crystal clear. And I think that's what they're not going to do. That's what we do. I don't know if they're going to do that. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm just super surprised that after the awards last year, the motor vehicle department driver's license look didn't become the hot newest trend in Hollywood content. And we've been looking for that all year. The fact that we escaped that because it looked so bad amazes me.
Yeah. Next question.
Maranatha Spanish Church is back from Grand Rapids with, can you use a Canon R5 for Zoom video?
Was there an issue with the R5 maintaining video over time? Is that the big issue? I think
I haven't heard anything about that.
I think
Steve,
that it doesn't.
For
some reason, I thought it doesn't. It can't leave it on for hours. Is I think that the thing that, but I'm not certain. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, that was basically the thing, that in the tests it was running really hot, really fast, so you couldn't use it constantly.
Right.
I think they did fix some of the issues with the firmware update, but yes, it should work through a capture card or through the webcam utility.
Yep. Next question.
Nolan Maurice of Minneapolis says, good schematic signal flow generation software or a web platform, either one.
I guess the question is Mac or PC, but go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, if you don't have complicated stuff, I mean, there's specific ones that are dedicated, but I know Alex and I are very fond of OmniGraffle as a simple way to draw out lines. It's amazingly easy to get into, and for drawing like parallel lines and doing hops over other cables and things like that, it's a pretty solid little package.
Yeah. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, on the Mac, I have Flowchart app, and now there's a version 3, but I still use the original Flowchart. It's free, and I use it all the time.
Yeah. I all I've used for years is OmniGraffle, so I don't. This might be a decade, so that's all I know. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, and then there's all if you are a Office user, there's always Visio as well. Expensive, but Visio.
Okay. Next question.
Joe at Alpha Creative in Gainesville, Florida. Alex, can you put a diagram of the Wacom tablet setup in Discord, please?
I don't have one right now, and I'm still working on the current diagram, but I'm happy to show it. It's not particularly difficult. You just the hard part is that right now I have a piece of software that I created to run the whiteboard part that I just have to publish to get it out there. I'm not, right now it's just a raw app that does the thing. So anyway, but you can use anything for it. Just mine happens to not have any interface. And so it has just what I needed and nothing more. And so I have to compile it. Compile it and publish it on the App Store or something so that people can actually use it. Anyway, but otherwise yeah, so it's a really straightforward thing. All you're doing is the computer is going, instead of going into the Wacom tablet, it's going into the switcher. The switcher is going out to the you're using the HDMI out, because I'm using the USB-C to get into the computer. The HDMI out is just program, and it's just routed into the Wacom. So the Wacom sees the program. Then but the USB from the Wacom still goes back into that ATEM, or back into the Mini, the Mac Mini. Then essentially what happens is the Wacom tablet is controlling the Mac Mini, but seeing the switcher. And then what you're doing is taking its output. It's basically black over white. You don't have to make it any more complicated, anything that'll play that out. And you basically just do a Luma key. And so you're just keying it with that black over white. And then what happens is that you now see it. And then the fill color, this is the key. The key is, this is what all my guys get confused when I was doing it. The key is the Mac Mini over white. And you could do this, by the way, you can do it with, you could do it with Keynote and, some kind of drawing or whatever as well, full screen. So not quite as nice. Mine has like a quick delete thing. Anyway, so but basically when you're using that as the key, any color, the fill is being controlled by the color in the switcher. You have 2 colors that you can choose. You just pick one and you make it. I like blues and red. You have to figure out what you're going to do and what you want it to do. The softness of your brush gives it kind of it lets you kind of squeeze it, and it'll look nicer. It won't look aliased. It'll be really nice and smooth, better than most illustrators. And then of course you can play with the thickness of it. And I'm going to show it to you guys. I thought it was going to be this week. It'll be next week, because it'll be next week. I'll show it. But I'll show it working. But I got to tell you, you get that running, and that's the end of wanting to do classes in person. Like, it is that, along with being able to use a switcher, being able to switch between different sources and be able to draw on top of them, like the old transparencies that we used to have. You do that, and you can't go back to class. Like, that's why I won't teach in class anymore. I mean, unless I can carry my rig in, I won't leave, because I have so much power sitting behind my desk. I don't even want to stand up. Go ahead, Sky.
This is a completely bizarre and side question for Aaron. As an owner of a Mac 128 and seeing what you have up over your shoulder, I'm just curious which is older.
Okay, that was completely side.
What, me or the Mac?
Okay, that was that was an ADD question. We're just gonna keep moving. Like, that's completely not like. Sorry. When you raise your hand and we're talking about a question, we're assuming that the question is related to our question. All right, next question.
Peter Vogel of Berlin is in with, is there a way to play videos inside an ATEM Mini? If not, what's the best way to do that?
I'll go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. The ATEM does not have any video playback software built in. It has just the media pool for still images. So basically, think about it again as any way you can get videos playing with an HDMI output will work. So there's the HyperDeck for doing playing stuff from an SD card that you can also then script from the ATEM with macros, and the ATEM can control it and tell it when to play and which file to load. There's also like iPad apps that can do it, where you can load a bunch of clips into an iPad and you get giant buttons that just play it out over HDMI. You can even do it from a computer using VLC or any other video playback software on a computer. That tends to be my least favorite option, just because it's a lot more fiddly to get those working right. But any kind of video playback device that outputs HDMI works fine. So it kind of depends on what kind of clips you need to play as to what ends up being the best option. I've used a tiny little device that's just a SD card and HDMI out, and that is fantastic for doing long running video clips like a sponsor loop that you just want up on a screen to be able to cut to during breaks and stuff, where it'll just play that one file on a loop, but there's no interface to it. You put in the SD card and it goes. That thing's great for that kind of video playback. If you need to be doing video clips for transitions and like stingers, the HyperDeck is probably the best option for that.
And go ahead, Roscoe and Steve.
And Jonas Dautel, who's in our Discord, has basically a HyperDeck emulator running on a Raspberry Pi. HyperDeck, sir? Yeah, go ahead.
He's going to be on too. So he's gonna, like, I've already talked to Jonas, and he's gonna come on for an hour and show it and talk about it and everything else. But yeah, to your point, I'm glad someone brought it up. But yeah, he was here earlier, but he'll be back for an hour after, I think after the 7th or something. Like, he had some stuff until February, but in February we're gonna have Jonas come in and show it. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up, Aaron. So then that would also mean animated lower thirds are not possible, I'm guessing.
Not natively, no. But again, you do that in some other hardware, and then you key it out in the ATEM.
And the thing to remember is also that you can do animated lower thirds with if they're hard edged and they don't have any black in them, or that you can do a Luma key. I showed that I'm just doing it out of Keynote, so you can take advantage of all of Keynote's animations and just pump it out and do a Luma key. And Luma key is what we used until like 5 years ago for everything in events. Like, it was, broadcast, high-end broadcast went to key fill, but a lot of us used Luma key for a long time. So you can absolutely do it. It just affects your design. It's one of the reasons a lot of motion graphics don't have motion blur, is because that makes it hard to Luma key. So you can definitely do that and get really good effects, even with transparency, if you Luma key well. And we'll do something about that in the future. Anyway, next question.
Jason Robertshaw of Sarasota, Florida is up next. With anyone use document cameras, any recommendations? I've used Elmo products in the past, and he notes, I need a dead simple solution for non-techie presenters.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Go to an iPhone. And run it in.
So the one thing that I'll say about document, what you want is the rig for the camera. The camera itself is worthless. But the rig itself, there's document rigs that they use that has a platform, and then it has an arm that goes up that you can adjust the height, and you're going to be able to fine tune. And then a lot of them will have lights on either side, so you can kind of light it up. Those are great. Like they do a great job at like positioning things, giving you light, and so on and so forth. But the camera, you want to put something else into that camera to make that work. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, this discussion came up in the teachers forum. And so if you get on Discord, go into the education forum, and I forget which one it is, but one of them has a whole bunch of suggestions. It includes a teacher who took a CD and she mounts it on her webcam from her laptop and then push the document where the keys are. It works. It's very simple. It works.
Right. Go ahead, Bill.
And if you want a personal little hacky way to do it, find yourself a used photo enlarger. They're usually a bigger version of this same kind of rig with a pole and then an arm out that can position what used to be a photo enlarger over a flat bed. They often have things to hold down the copy. So those can be turned into really nice document cameras.
Go ahead, Guy. You were showing something.
Oh, yeah. This one is the hover cam. This is a 4K one with a light built in. And it also is natively integrated into Zoom. So there's some other things that you can do with it. I'll put a link in the chat. So it's a 4K version with a light and adjustable arm that is super popular.
Yeah, for higher end, I mean, that's definitely ease of use is there, and 4K is great. I haven't looked at it enough. A lot of the stuff I've been doing has been that we've used them for. We've been using the big arms and putting big cameras under it so that we can get it in there, but you may not need that. Next question.
Chris from Atlanta says, Aaron, is it advisable to use only an RPI with a Stream Deck and companion for ATEM switching in a production environment?
Assuming it's a Raspberry Pi. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that setup. I have a Raspberry Pi running the companion software, and the reason I like that is because it becomes just a package that just does that one thing, and you can install it somewhere, and you don't have to worry about your computer randomly turning off for going to sleep or whatever. And I have that on my desk, so this is my normal setup now. So this thing is not plugged into my computer. It is plugged into my ATEM, and it can control both ATEMs. It can control the matrix and the hyperdeck and whatever else I need on the desk. I'm a big fan of that setup.
Next question.
S. Magoo in the San Francisco Bay Area is in with, has anyone used multiple UAD Apollo interfaces together? I have an X4 and looking to add an X8, but want to make sure they will merge.
No, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I wish Victor were here because he's a big fan of, he uses the Apollo interfaces, but yeah, from what I understand is they will show up as two separate interfaces in your computer. It's not like they're gonna, combine all the inputs and outputs as one interface. What you can do though is, since both of them have both optical in and out, you can say use the X4, do all your process, because the Apollo interfaces have DSP processing built in. You can do all your processing on the X4 and send those tracks out via optical into the X8, and you can use that single interface in your actual DAW or whatever software you're using.
Next question.
And it's the last one we're up to today. This is from Jason Robertshaw of Sarasota, Florida. What's the best link to use to try to explain office hours to someone so they can also join in too?
So here's the thing. I know that this is going to be hard. I have a hard out. And so I just want to say something really quickly, and then I'm going to hit the post meeting and we can talk about it a little bit there. You guys can talk about it. And if you're still there, when I come back, I'll come back. I have a quick meeting at 9 o'clock I have to jump into. So here's the thing is that all of us, you learn from all the people around you, where you were working, where you were up to, the people when you're bouncing around. And sometimes we can learn it in forums. This is just a place for us to discuss it, for us to cross pollinate our ideas. And we have this wide range of backgrounds, and that cross pollination happens almost nowhere in our industry. where you have, literally hundreds of years of experience all in one place, having conversation about different subject matters and bouncing around and basically leveraging off of each of us. I'm learning from all of you, you're learning from me, you're learning from each other. It's what I call, a peer-to-peer learning system. And we're going to continue this conversation if you want in the meetings. Of course, you have a link. If you want to, I'm going to jump in and start the meeting, and then I'm going to drop out and do my meeting, and then I'll come back if there's time.